Hey guys, before we get started, I need to clarify something. This video talks largely about the absence of traditional Mario coins in Odyssey and how the evolution of Mario coins mirrors Japan's history with gold coins as well. Well, right after rendering this video, I saw that, bam, there they are. Though they still feel really out of place with the other coin-like items. But in any case, I admit, I just simply didn't see them. Completely my mistake. But I hope the slip of the eye doesn't spoil the history and culture I still really want to talk about today. So, despite my blunder, please enjoy the video. Hey everyone, Gaijin Goomba here. So with E3 right around the corner, I think it's safe to say that a lot of people, including myself, are super hyped for Super Mario Odyssey. After all, Nintendo did state that the game would be its main focus for the event, and that has me pumped. Why? Because look at this! I know Nintendo likes to experiment when it comes to 3D Mario games like Sunshine and Galaxy, but this game takes it to a whole new level. The steel skyline of New Donk City, the arid Hispanic landscape of this Calavera town, a lush dense forest with robots, and some sort of food kingdom? And each one of these worlds has tons of new enemies and allies. That isn't to say that everything's changed though, there are still piranha plants, spinies, hammer brothers, bullet bills, and the like, and let's not forget the old-time convention of Bowser kidnapping Peach. But, you notice one convention that hasn't quite returned? Coins. Seriously, go back through all the trailers and tell me if you see any coins at all. The only time I even see anything remotely coin-like are those purple upside-down triangles in Calavera Town. Hey, don't you do it. And then we have what look like purple nuts in the Forest World. Not a single sparkle of gold. Now, I know that may seem like a small detail when compared to all the things we've seen in Odyssey so far, but that is a huge tradition that no official Mario game has ever been without. From main franchise titles to sports spin-off games, coins have been omnipresent in every title. And for heaven's sake, there was New Super Mario Bros. 2 for the 3DS, a game that completely focused around coin collection. But you know, I wonder, even after New Super Mario Bros. 2, coins were literally everywhere in Mario games, which brings up the issue of challenge. When you're literally dumping coins on the player for extra lives, which at this point are meaningless, or points, which are even more meaningless in this day and age, is there even a challenge to the game anymore? In all seriousness, I feel like Nintendo's been hyperinflating coins in their game to a point where they're basically worthless. Seriously, when was the last time you felt you needed to farm coins to get lives in a Mario game? They're just not necessary anymore, especially when there are easier, more worthwhile ways to get lives. Now, I know what you're thinking. Gaijin, you're the culture guy. Are you really about to drop a video on us about Mushroom Kingdom's economics? Actually, no, but I would certainly love to see MatPat or Austin cover that issue. Instead, I feel the need to point out the complete and utter irony when it comes to this situation. Because just as Nintendo has inflated Mario's currency to a near state of worthlessness, so too did Nintendo's home of Japan nearly destroy its economy the literal, exact same way. Verbatim. But to understand this, we have to go all the way back to the 1550s, just as Japan's Warring States era finally started to come to a close. Because before that specific time, Japan did business with rice. No, I'm not even joking. For hundreds of years, Japan's centralized currency was based on the koku. Now, in essence, the koku was a unit of volume equal to about 1 cubic meter and 150 kilos or 130 pounds. Basically, 1 koku equated to the amount of rice to feed one adult person for an entire year. This isn't to say that other currency like gold and silver didn't exist, after all, commoners and merchants would still use both metals in different parts of Japan, but it wasn't the central currency. The rice-based koku held that standard. And during the Edo period, your potential worth was determined by how much rice you had and how much you could make. This assessment was called a kokudaka and ranged from standard daimyo landowners at 10,000 koku to Kagahan just under the shogun at 1,000,000 koku. As far as its actual use as currency goes, samurai and government officials would predominantly be paid in koku stipends, mixed with a little bit of gold and silver. But again, that depended on region. Farmers would also pay government and land ownership taxes based on the koku system. This, however, all changed when the Portuguese rolled into Japan's trade harbors in 1550 during the Nanban trade. I mean, seriously, imagine being a Portuguese tradesman traveling halfway across the world to sell your wares, and you're being offered short-grain white rice as payment for your stack of matchlock rifles. Eventually, the lack of foreign interest in rice forced the shogunate to develop a new currency for foreign barter, which became known as the koban. You know, those long coins you see beckoning cats hold? Those became the newly established currency of Japan, having a worth of 1 koku per coin. Now, for those of you wondering what in the heck all of this has to do with Mario, have a look at the old school coin. Barring graphical limitation, it looks exactly like the koban, elongated and featureless except for minute patterns running down the middle of the coin that give it a squared look. Now put a pin on this because I'm about to utterly blow your mind. Going back to Japan's use of the koban, let's just say it completely failed. The shogunate spent almost 300 years digging up gold from the Sado Island gold mine, but for all that work, the koban nearly destroyed Japan's economic infrastructure. With gold not only becoming the preferred currency for foreign trade but also merchant trade, its worth grew and grew as the value of the merchant class in Japan grew and grew during the Edo period. It actually ballooned to a point that the koban began to outperform the value of the koku, which in turn made daimyos and samurai poorer and poorer. To fight the loss of net worth, daimyo actually began creating their own koban as local currency. And as you would expect, the rapid influx of locally minted money completely devalued the worth of the shogunate's printed koban. The locally minted koban were bad enough as each coin had a varying alloyed percentage of gold, thus their worth was fluctuating, but the big problem here is that the shogunate printed koban became less and less valuable as the amount of gold used to print each coin also shrank. This in turn actually made counterfeit koban technically more valuable than the government printed coins, and you can only imagine what kind of chaos that created. Eventually, during the Meiji Restoration in 1868, Japan discontinued the koban in its entirety and replaced it with the European-inspired currency yen. Nowadays, the koban is still a big part of Japanese culture, but now acts as more of a canvas for custom decorative coins, and oh boy, doesn't that look familiar. And speaking of, let's go back to the old Mario coin. We already established that it's eerily similar to the government-printed koban coin, but that's only one similarity. As the Mario franchise continued, coins also shrank in size, slowly becoming smaller and smaller over the generations to the size that we see now in games. At the same time, the influx of Mario coins in recent games has become so great that, well, honestly, they're really not worth getting. Game overs have little impact and 1-ups can be gained faster through other methods. Why bother collecting 100 coins the old-fashioned way when you can just endlessly stop on a shelf for a few minutes and yield thousands of times worth the reward? I mean, we're cheating the system and essentially getting counterfeit lives. In comparison, the shogunate printed koban also shrank not only in size but also of worth, to a point that counterfeit measures were actually more attractive than regulated ones. People would go out of their way to create their own value rather than following the government-regulated currency. And during the peak of koban's popularity, hyperinflation was everywhere. Sure doesn't sound like New Super Mario Bros. 2 at all, right? And in the end, Japan completely wiped out its domestic currency in favor of a foreign system, and geez, the more I think about it, from each world we've seen in Super Mario Odyssey, it's very possible that each world has its own coins. For example, Calavera Town has the upside-down triangles for its coins, and that level has a giant upside-down pyramid in the middle of the map. And while those purple nuts are on a rich forest level, the forest itself seems to be inhabited by all kinds of robots who would likely use them. Lord knows what the fork people use as currency. I don't know, guys. I'm at a loss. I simply can't believe how Nintendo literally mirrored the rise and fall of gold coinage to that of its country of origin. Was it intentional? Was it a coincidence? I don't really know. But what I do know is that the Mario franchise is going to continue to surprise me with amazing references to culture to the day I freaking die. And I'm totally okay with that. But thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the newest Game Theorists videos, and hey, speaking of Mario, check out my channel to learn even more about the cultural origins of gaming's biggest franchise. Or check out one of MatPat's many theories on the Mushroom Kingdom. His video on Mario Kart 8's disregard for safety really blew my mind. But until next time, everyone, this is Gaijin Goomba, signing out.